a silent epidemic that's costing lives. Today we're pulling back the curtain on a topic that's been shrouded in stigma and misunderstanding for far too long.
You know, that's such a powerful way to frame it. Why do you think this particular issue has remained so hidden?
Well, it's a complex issue, but a lot of it comes down to societal expectations. Men are often taught from a young age to be strong and not show vulnerability. This toxic masculinity, as some call it, can have devastating consequences. Did you know that men are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide than women in the US?
That statistic is absolutely chilling. It really underscores the urgency of this conversation.
Exactly. And what's particularly troubling is how depression often manifests differently in men. We're not always looking at someone who's visibly sad or crying. Instead, it might show up as irritability or anger.
That's interesting. So, are you saying that a man who's suddenly short-tempered might actually be depressed?
Precisely. It's like this pressure cooker of emotions with no release valve. Men might lash out at their partners or colleagues over minor issues when they're really struggling with this overwhelming sense of emptiness. And here's the kicker, many don't even realize it's depression.
That must make it incredibly challenging for both the individual and those around them. What are some other signs we should be looking out for?
Well, one major red flag is this profound loss of interest in things they used to love. Imagine being passionate about something your whole life. Maybe it's playing guitar or coaching your kid's soccer team, and suddenly it all feels meaningless. The technical term is anhedonia, but really it's like the world loses its color.
Oh, that's such a vivid description. And I imagine this doesn't just affect hobbies, right?
Absolutely not. This loss of interest can devastate relationships too. Men might stop calling their friends, withdraw from their partners, or become distant from their children. And here's what's particularly insidious about it. This withdrawal often happens gradually, so people might not notice until the isolation is severe.
You know, that reminds me of a study I read recently. It found that men with depression were more likely to report symptoms of anger, substance abuse, and risk-taking behavior compared to women. It's like they're trying to mask their pain with these stereotypically masculine behaviors.
That's a fantastic point. And it ties into another major sign we need to discuss: changes in appetite and weight. Some men might completely lose their appetite, dropping significant weight without trying, while others might find themselves overeating, especially comfort foods, as a way to cope with emotional pain.
So if we had only known to look for these signs earlier, it's heartbreaking to think about how many men might be suffering in silence.
It really is. And let's not forget about the sleep disturbances. We're talking about guys who used to sleep like rocks suddenly lying awake for hours, or others who can barely drag themselves out of bed after sleeping 12 hours. The body's entire rhythm gets disrupted.
And I'm guessing this leads to that bone-crushing fatigue you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It's not just physical tiredness, it's this overwhelming exhaustion that no amount of rest seems to fix. Imagine trying to run a marathon while wearing a lead suit. That's how some men describe just getting through their daily routines.
That sounds absolutely debilitating. How does this typically affect their work performance?
Well, it can be devastating to their careers. Tasks that used to take minutes now take hours. Decision-making becomes almost impossible. And here's where it gets really complicated. This often feeds into feelings of worthlessness and guilt, creating this vicious cycle of decreased performance, leading to more depression.
You know, it's striking how interconnected all these symptoms are. It's like they form this web that's hard to escape from.
That's exactly it. The sleep problems lead to fatigue, which affects work performance, which feeds worthlessness, which makes it harder to sleep, and round it goes. And here's something else crucial. Many men experience physical symptoms like headaches, digestive issues, or chronic pain that they don't realize are connected to depression.
Oh, that's fascinating about the physical manifestations. Why do you think men often focus more on those physical symptoms?
Well, in many ways, it's easier for men to acknowledge and seek help for physical symptoms than emotional ones. They might go to a doctor complaining of insomnia or stomach problems, when the root cause is actually depression. It's like their bodies are finding ways to signal distress when their minds won't admit it.
That really highlights the importance of healthcare providers being aware of these connections. Do you think there's been progress in this area?
There has been some progress, but we still have a long way to go. Many healthcare providers are becoming more aware of how depression can manifest differently in men, but there's still a significant gap in recognition and treatment. And let's not forget the role of stigma here. Many men are reluctant to seek help, even when they recognize something's wrong.
So what would you say to someone who's listening right now and recognizing these signs in themselves or someone they care about?
First and foremost, know that you're not alone. Depression affects millions of men worldwide, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Second, understand that depression is treatable. There are multiple effective approaches, from therapy to medication to lifestyle changes. And finally, take action. Talk to a healthcare provider, reach out to a mental health professional, or start by confiding in someone you trust.
That's such valuable advice, especially for those who might be hesitating to seek help.
Absolutely. And remember, recovery isn't always linear. Some days will be better than others, and that's okay. The important thing is to take that first step and keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time.
Well, as we wrap up this incredibly important conversation, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away?
If there's one thing I want everyone to remember, it's this. Seeking help for depression isn't a sign of weakness. It's an act of incredible strength. It takes courage to face these feelings head on and ask for support. And for those who suspect a man in their life might be struggling, don't be afraid to reach out. Sometimes, just knowing someone cares can make all the difference.
That's so powerful. Thank you for shedding light on this critical issue.
It's been a heavy topic, but an incredibly important one. As we look to the future, my hope is that we can continue to break down these barriers and create a world where men feel empowered to prioritize their mental health. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about individual well-being, it's about strengthening our families, our communities, and our society as a whole.